I've never seen the level of self-destruction in a political campaign. You have Democrats who are reinforcing the biggest negative against their candidate. Republicans fully have accepted a convicted felon who lied in the debate, and they're sitting here saying, y'all go right ahead. What do you make of the insanity of the Democratic Party?
Unfortunately, Roland, I share your incredulity about the whole situation. But for me, this has very little to do with Joseph Biden and much more to do with the very reality that Vice President Kamala Harris might be close to inheriting or sitting in the seat of president than a lot of people wished. And what we're seeing is not the base of the party coming out and demanding that Biden step down, the voters who actually participated in the primary. We're not seeing the poor come out and that Biden step down. You're not seeing Black Americans, either men or women, demand that he step down. Latinos expanded their reach and an appreciation and commitment to voting for Biden. So I think at this point, we can look at who is making these demands. These tend to be very wealthy white men who are from very particular political camps, who have a lot to gain if there is a Trump presidency and all the chaos that will bring with it. So I'm just hoping. I saw Chris Matthews today did an interview, and he was talking about the fact that Joe Biden is kind of built for people to underestimate him. He's not necessarily part of the elite as we tend to think of. I mean, he's more elite as compared to my community, for sure. But for him, being a part of the working class and sort of making that a part of his identity, he sits in that space. But then he's also, in some ways, a bit of an outsider. He was not the natural successor after he served faithfully as Barack Obama's vice president, something that most white men, I think many of us were shocked to see an older white man exhibit that level of deference and commitment to fulfilling that Black man's vision, which was a beautiful thing. And then he was passed over for Hillary Clinton. And what we're seeing is a lot of folks from the Clinton camp. We're seeing a lot of folks who are making a lot of demands in the face of absolute facts. Like, how about the fact that the Republicans and the Heritage Foundation have all, since June, they've been saying since 2 days after the debate, if the Democrats tried to remove Biden off the ticket, got the lawsuits already. And whoever this mythical person would be who would replace Joe Biden, what's their ground game? Who are they? And how on earth are you going to be able to galvanize people around that person? Because I'm assuming if they're going to make this a thing, I do not see them pointing to Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris. And again, I think a lot of this has much more to do with the fact that a Black woman is this much closer to the presidency. And by this much closer, I mean in the debate, Joe Biden's humanity was on display. The morality of that man was on display. And yet his ability to be one of the most successful presidents as it pertains to legislation. And quite frankly, Joe Biden was not my candidate. He was not somebody that I was going for in 2020. I ultimately did because I needed to not have Trump in office. But he's been a damn good president by like many objective measures. And so the only people who benefit from this are the Democratic elite who aren't even, they don't have a plan beyond let's replace him and get someone on the ticket because we don't think he can win. Well, you had your chance. That's what the whole primary process was for. He got over 80% of the vote in the primary. Some people did run against. Heard folks say, well, those weren't serious candidates. Well, let's, put our grown-up pants on. This is what it is. People made decisions about whether or not they were going to run or not. This is the candidate that the voters are galvanized around. And at this point, I don't have people calling into my show at Sirius saying they want Joe Biden to step down. I have people calling into my show at Sirius saying, what the hell is going on? And why are they ruining this for everybody?
Let me do this here. There's an issue with your microphone, Lurie. So let's see if we can get that handled, because it sounded like it was a wind tunnel. So if y'all can handle that for me. Let me bring in my panel right now. Lauren Victoria Burke, Black Press USA, out of Arlington, Virginia. We have, of course, Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. Also, Christopher Boozy, CEO of Spoutable out of New Jersey. Let me go to Christopher. Christopher, you've been tweeting about this, and you keep saying the numbers don't lie. You keep saying that Biden can win. Explain that.
Hey, Martin. And I share Lori's frustration in this because it's insanity. Yes, not only he can win, I think he can win and do better than he did in 2020. The numbers, look, everyone is basing all of this chaos over polls that are garbage. I'm just going to say it like it is. They're garbage polls. The methodology behind these polls are garbage. They're not accurate, and the media is still touting the polls because it drives a narrative. Okay, so let's break it down. First off, Biden, in terms of on the ground, is doing extremely well. I talk to reporters who are covering the campaigns. I talk to people who are I talk to people who are actually interacting with voters, and they all say, the voters are energized. They can't wait to vote for Biden. The debate was not really an issue. Yes, people were a little concerned in terms of, him talking slowly, what was going on, but they were not saying, hey, he should step aside. They were not saying, hey, he should be replaced or anything like that. Now, these are voters on the ground. So the first thing for me when I look at if a candidate going down is, one, what kind of support are they getting in terms of their donors? When I mean donors, I'm talking about small grassroots donors. Two, when I'm looking at numbers, and I'm not talking about polls because I don't look at polls, I'm looking at social media. What are people saying on social media? Are people saying, once again, she should step aside, or, hey, I'm supporting him, I'm behind him? You got to parse through the bots, the trolls, the fake accounts, things like that, and get down to the actual people. And once again, the majority of folks are like, what is going on with the Democratic Party? We're supporting him. We don't want to see him replaced. So then the other thing is historical data. Replacing a candidate, for example, before we get into even how I know Biden can win, historical data, like with LBJ stepping aside, that was a disaster, an absolute disaster when Democrats did that. And I have been tweeting, if Democrats do that again, whether they replace them with someone totally different or if they replace them with VP Harris, they will get slaughtered in November. And the reason being is because first you're giving up the incumbency, you're giving up the bully pulpit. That's the first thing. Secondly, you're going to end up going into a convention where it's going to cause a lot of chaos. Remember, there were millions of people who voted during the primaries. They want Biden. They like Biden. And there are a lot of people who also like VP Harris and who would love for VP Harris to be the nominee. The problem, though, with that is it's a little too cute and it's a little too late. If you replace Biden and put VP Harris in, there are going to be people who are going to feel like their vote didn't matter, that it is the quote-unquote elites picking whoever. So that's going to cause chaos going into the convention and out of convention. And if there's chaos, they're not going to win. You have to have unity. And then the other thing is, as your previous guest stated, if they replace VP Harris and put someone totally new in there, that's it. I mean, that's game over. You're talking about losses up and down the ballot because, once again, who's this person? Are they going to be able to galvanize folks in 4-ish months? Are they going to be able to get the base? I've heard people float Gavin Newsom, Whitmore. Gretchen Whitmore. It's not going to work. So in terms of November, before all of this happened, I have been keeping track of this stuff. And I've been saying for a long time, not only do I believe Biden can flip Florida, which people think I'm crazy with saying that, but also North Carolina. The reason is this is going to be the first election where abortion is on a ballot. 11 states have some sort of, abortion-related measure on the ballot. As we have seen before, Democrats have done extremely well at time abortions on the ballot. Then you have the conviction. You have the 2 impeachments, you have the indictments, and on that you have, once again, the Supreme Court ruling immunity and the Roe v. Wade. If all of that is on the table, I do not see a path for Donald Trump. There is no path. But when you listen to the pundits, you listen to these analysts, you would think it was the complete and total opposite of that. It's just not true. Lastly, every cycle since 2016, Democrats have continuously overperformed. They overperformed in 2018. They overperformed in 2020. As we know, in 2022, when they talked about the red wave, they said, oh, the red wave, Democrats are going to get clobbered. Not only did Democrats gain a seat in the Senate, they barely lost the House, where it was predicted that they were going to lose 20 to 30 seats. And then across the country, they also did well in state, local races, government, shit like that. So this is going to be the very first election, presidential election, where we have abortion on the ballot. And I do believe that is galvanizing people, especially obviously women, like we've never seen before. So once again, I agree with the previous, and I share the same frustration that Democrats are actually hurting themselves by all of this. Yeah. Public, it's not.
So, Lauren Victoria Berg, here's a perfect example. So, a poll came out today regarding Latino voters. Go to my iPad, Henry. Matt Barreto, one of the top pollsters. It's 53-36, Biden over Trump. But this is what he said. He said that Biden can increase his advantage from plus 70 to plus 30 among Latinos if he do several things. Here's the thing that I keep saying, Lauren. It's July 11th. The election is not July 12th. So when I'm watching these folks who are saying, oh my God, there's no path to victory, you literally have 117 days to actually change the game. So I don't understand the logic of the donors and these analysts and podcasters and Axelrod and others when the Washington Post poll today shows it's tied. What the hell?
It shows that it's tied. I think that what you're seeing is sort of a lack and a reluctance of certain quadrants within the Democratic Party to finally get off the stage. I think the Clinton crew is still sort of in there wanting to be something. 100 days is really not a long period of time, I think, in a political campaign. They have 39 days to the convention. And this is problematic to have prominent people in a political party effectively destroying their presumptive nominee for the presidency of the United States in public, by the way. Every night on CNN, and it's for some cases for some members of Congress showing up again and again and again on cable TV to say negative things about the presumptive nominee of your party. If you think that communication strategy, no matter how anybody might feel about anything, I can assure you that if they keep doing that, they're going to lose, not because of what happened on June 27, but in the last 14 days, but because of what happened in the last 14 days. I actually think most people out there, and in calling people and talking to members of Congress about their constituents, most people out there do not have the same ways that people do in the Beltway, or people who are standing in the White House briefing room or in the U.S. Capitol. There's a disconnect there. And when President Biden at the beginning of this week talked about elites, I think he hit the nail on the head, because there's a group in there who thinks differently from what. There's a group of elite people, frankly, who are in the media who think that everybody thinks like them. And as somebody from New York, I get it. The New York Times seems to think that the thing they say is important, but most normal people are not thinking that way. It's just simple as that. There is some, in Virginia, we have a guy named Larry Sabato who did reflect in the first few days that he thought that there was going to be some distance between Biden and Trump in the polling numbers that he says he saw fairly quickly. But it does take a few weeks to figure out whether or not something like June 27 really has some resonance. And I don't know that we have the answer to that, but I'll tell you what, it's hard. I think it's hard for me to believe that a Republican Party who can't get the popular vote in over 24 years is suddenly going to get the popular vote now in this year, running a lunatic and a pathological liar as their lead candidate versus somebody who is trusted but is going through a trial and tribulation right now. It is problematic. I think the Democratic Party is making a tragic mistake. And I think there's a lack of leadership there. I think if Speaker Pelosi was there, quite frankly, she would have told the caucus to shut up by now. They are doing damage to themselves. And you have to remember, just lastly, the only members of Congress care about is their own election. That's it. Once they sense that their election will be jeopardized by the person at the top of the ticket for whatever reason, they will bail, and that's what you're seeing. And of course, the vice president is not the vice president. It's going to be interesting to see how they navigate this if they push Biden out of there, which I frankly doubt it. I think he's dug in. But if they were to do that, if it's not Vice President Harris, they're going to see some, if they're seeing rancor now, they better get ready.
Greg Carr, here's the thing that people need to understand. This is not about, oh my God, Dems love Joe Biden. If you look at the numbers, they thought he was old in 2020.
Right.
But what happened when they went and voted? And so what I'm looking at is, after all of this rancor, it's still 46-46. Trump has a ceiling. So what it means, Democrats, get off your asses, drive your base to the polls to win. But you don't sit here on July 11th and it's like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. I mean, this poll came out. It is hysteria driven by one side, and they've spent 2 weeks attacking their own and not spending the same amount of time going after Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes no sense unless you don't care. I echo everything that has been said so far. What Lurie said about Vice President Harris, Christopher, what you said, Brother Boozy, as it relates to these polls flying in the face of conventional logic. And of course, Lauren, exactly what you said. This is about naked self-interest. This morning, Dominic, Mastrangello, reporting in The Hill, puts this on Obama. And I'm with him 100%, because George Clooney called Obama before he put that op-ed in the New York Times. They were at that fundraiser they had a couple of weeks ago. And according to the reporting, Obama didn't tell him not to do it, didn't tell him to do it, which sent the signal. Most of these people, like that swamp creature out of Louisiana, James Carville, they are former either Clinton operatives or Obama operatives, not looking for a smoking gun, and there's other things that will be revealed. Maybe they know something about the president's health that we don't. We'll see in a minute, maybe or maybe not. But what we're seeing is Pelosi, for example, telling people in swing districts, do what you got to do to survive, but wait until after NATO. NATO wrapped up today. What we're seeing clearly is that there is an orchestration. Obama and it's forced Joe Biden to sound a little bit like Bernie Sanders. He's waging war against the elite. Ironically, Sanders is all in for Biden, as are the voters. So I'll just end with this. The New York Times, whether they got an axe to grind, whether the Sulzbergers or whoever has got the axe to grind with Biden because he wouldn't give them interviews or whatever, when you're looking at fools like Brett Stevens on their op-ed page, you expect it from Brett Stevens or Ross Dohat, maybe even from a guy like Nicholas Kristof. But here comes all of a sudden Paul Krugman. Here comes these other, today's op-ed pages is another bloodbath. Nobody reading the New York Times and the Washington Post but us. Ignore these fools, and whatever will be. The governor of Michigan saying, well, maybe you should take a cognitive test. We know you want to be the president, Big Gretch. We know you mad still because he didn't pick you and pick Kamala Harris because he needed to win, like Clyburn and them told him. And then there looms the governor of California, because the bottom line is this. If Biden is reelected and steps down before, then Kamala Harris has the power of the incumbency. And you know who looms after Kamala Harris? The governor of Maryland, Wes Moore. Y'all are soft white nationalists, and you're willing to risk all the rest of us because of your political ambition.
Lurie, here's the thing that jumps out at me, Lurie. And again, you have Democrats who are sitting here going, let's watch every move for mistake. Well, the last couple days, no mistake, so no coverage. You had Brian Stelter go on CNN and say, well, he's been almost invisible since the debate. 18 appearances in 9 days. And I tweeted him, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? That's not invisible. So what you're saying is, you are seeing a cabal to saying, the hell with the voters, we're gonna decide, and I made it clear, if they think they can skip Vice President Harris, they are going to launch a civil war in the party that is going to destroy them for decades.
Roland, they could try it if they want to. I guarantee they will live to regret it. But unfortunately, so will the rest of us. The Trump campaign is effective. The Republican Party is effectively broke. They are being bled by all of the legal battles, and they don't have a great ground game in a number of swing states. This is a winnable contest. And in addition to all of that, everything that Chris Boozy and all the other guests said is I absolutely concur. But we also have Project 2025 right there, like right there. And if we were talking about that and educating people about that, about the threats to our democracy, and comparing that to the advances that we have won. And I know that a lot of us in our community, we want to see the president issue the legislation that's got black in it. We want the black housing program. We want the black affirmative action program, the black healthcare plan. Listen, we live in America as it is, not in the America as we would want it to be. As soon as that were to happen, we know that the white folks who are very upset about black advancement would file a lawsuit and that legislation would be canceled. So we have to be more sophisticated as the electorate. What are the programs and the policies and the positions that have been very advantageous to black people? I had somebody call and say, well, what has Biden done for black people? You can literally Google what has Biden done for black people, and the fact sheet is immense. None of it says the black plan, but it is extraordinarily important that we become way more facile in thinking about what skin we have in the game. I also just think that it's important that even as we look at Vice President Kamala Harris, who I believe will be a phenomenal president, we are in one of the most anti-black, anti-woman social moments that we have been, certainly in my lifetime. And I know I'm not the oldest one on this panel, but the reality is for decades, we have been seeing this increase and a surge in the most recent years in anti-blackness and anti-woman sentiment. And the idea that Vice President Kamala Harris would be able to just sort of waltz into that position and take it and run, I think is ludicrous. And I think it undermines her ability to be the very effective president that I think she's ultimately going to be. But if we were talking more about Project 2025, then we could also talk about Agenda 180, which is Project 2025's day-by-day plan for 180 days as to how that plan is going to get implemented. All of this energy focusing on a president who has been, by most accounts, one of the most successful presidents in our nation's history as it pertains to leveling the playing field, and certainly not perfect. I mean, it's Joe Biden. Come on, we ain't got to love Joe Biden to recognize that it's far better to have been under this presidency than it would have been under his opponent. But to think that we have the most successful president that we don't had in generations, particularly for black people and black interests, and white money to leak and just come in and say we don't like him because he's too old. We knew he was old. He been old. We was telling y'all that when Obama picked him. So this is not new. White supremacy is just reinventing itself. And I love the soft white nationalism, because what we need to be very clear about is we don't do permanent friends. We don't do permanent enemies. We got permanent issues. And my issue is black people. And I need black people to not come out of this in a situation where there is chaos, because I don't have an underground railroad, Brother Roland. And I don't know if you do or if anybody else do. I didn't get the memo about who's building the underground railroad for our community if this goes very, very right. And by that, I mean if the Republicans were to come into power. Project 2025 is a phenomenally detailed vision statement of every step they're going to take. And we just don't have the time to deal with all this chaos and foolishness. We got grown folk business to take care of. We got community to build. This is ridiculous.
Then, of course, you had Donald Trump claiming he knew nothing about it. But guess what? The Heritage Foundation, the author of Project 2025, they are the lead sponsor of the Republican National Convention.
Time to get paid, blow up like
Fanbase exclusive audio rooms are here. Now tap, talk, and get paid. Monetize your live podcast and most engaging conversations. You can now create exclusive audio chat rooms only for your subscribers and biggest fans. And as a user, subscribe, listen, and talk to your favorite creators. Now tap, talk, and get paid. Because everyone's a fan of something, and everyone has a fan base.
I'm blowing up like you thought I, and if you don't know.